Hello, UCAR. Peter Christensen here. Me and my pterodactyl are coming to you from the whiteboard. So, it's May. We're taking viewer requests. Got one. This is a shout out to Craig Wagner at the UAR. He brought up this one and said this would make a good tip. So I'm rolling with it. Since it was from Craig, I thought I'd throw in the whiteboard. I know how Craig loves a whiteboard. Okay, so here's the scenario. Counteroffer versus addendum. What do you use? When do you use which when you're putting an addendum out to someone? Because there's that little box at the beginning. Is this a counteroffer or is this an addendum? All right, so let's pretend here buyer and seller are under contract already. And then buyer says, okay, here's addendum number 1 that comes in. All right, so is this an addendum or is this a counteroffer? Remember, we're already under contract. So what does that do? In effect, it seals, these terms are set, they're accepted. So are you countering those terms? No, because they're accepted. So addendum number 1 is an addendum. And let's say seller says, okay, I agree to those terms. Well, now you've set that. Now these are all one, right? They're all accepted terms. So let's say seller comes in and says, all right, I've got addendum number 2. Again, how would seller mark this? Is this an addendum or is this a counteroffer? Well, addendum number 1 is already accepted. So you're not countering those terms at all. You're proposing additional terms, maybe changes to the accepted terms. But again, this is going to be an addendum. But let's say buyer says, I'm not going to accept this, but I want to modify the terms of those. And I want to make number 3. So this is addendum number 3. All right, is that an addendum or is that a counter offer? This time, we're merging these two together, right? So this time it would be a counter offer. Why? Because you're now countering the contents of the prior addendum. So you're linking these two together, right? They become one. Then if this gets accepted by seller, these terms are joined together. Basically, you're pulling all the terms in from number 2 that aren't contradicted in number 3. We went through this with the addendum train video. But by marking a counteroffer, you're clearly indicating I am responding to that prior addendum. Now let's say you had those two simultaneously out there. Let's say buyer wasn't trying to, get my little eraser, wasn't trying to counter number 2, but was just putting forth new terms in number 3. A little tricky when there's 2 addenda floating out there at the same time. But if they mark counteroffer just because that's how they always mark it, then it gets confusing because it's going to link those two together. If that's not what they mean to do, if they want to stand independent, then they need to mark that as an addendum and let them stand independent of each other. It gets a little confusing. You want to always clarify. So if buyer really didn't want to respond to number 2, just said, nah, not interested, but I'll put forth an independent number 3, probably should reject it, right? So it's clear. I reject number 2 and I'm proposing a separate number 3. Otherwise it gets confusing. Are these two linked? Is he countering number 2 with number 3? Which would then pull those terms together, remember. Merge those two together. If that's not your intent, always cancel. You could have 2 separate addenda floating around. That is possible. And they could be independent of each other. But make it clear by using addendum and counter offer appropriately so that there is clarity in the deal. That's what we love, is clarity in the deal. Hopefully that clears things up. It doesn't make things more confusing. If I made them more confusing, make a comment and I'll I'll try to clear that up. Remember, this is meant for informational purposes only. This is not legal advice. If you need specific legal advice, please seek the advice of your attorney. And go have a great day.